Thank you guys for watching the Animal One Guy YouTube videos. If you like this video, please leave a like and even comment below. And if you like all my content, please hit the subscribe button. And why not click the bell icon for notifications too? That way you can see all my videos. Give me the ball. Alright everybody, so you can see the title. I'm making this video to kind of comment or respond to the Brian Barczyk's Tegu that died, his Argentine blue Tegu Tazz that died recently. A couple was posted a couple days ago. And if you don't know Brian is the largest reptile YouTube channel, like 3 million subscribers. Does a daily blog, has a whole reptile zoo, is a well-known snake breeder, things like that. And I don't want to address any of his controversy in the past. I've talked about him before sometimes. I think Brian is a guy with really good intentions, and I think he really cares about his animals, and I think he's a lot different now than he was then. So that's to wrap all that up. But so Tazz, his blue Tegu, recently died. And so with me, guys, you know, I do reptile rescues. So I get and treat the sick reptiles, the ones people throw out. They're missing hands, they're missing fingers, their tails are half gone. You know, they have infections, they need injections of antibiotics, they need tube feeding. I don't get your normal pet reptile. So every time there's a YouTube video where someone has a pet that's sick and in need, the first thing people watch, they come and they comment to me, hey, do you see this? Do you think you could help this YouTuber? Do you think you know what's wrong? Do you think this thing's gonna die? So here's what sucks. So Tazz, his blue Tegu, which is, as far as I know, was his only Tegu at the Reptarium, the zoo, died. And first of all, that sucks, because that was my favorite lizard to see, and the one I wanted to see the most when I went there. So guys, there are some mutations of the black and white Tegu. There's the red Tegu, there's the blue Tegu, you know, and so on. And really what it is, the coloration is so slight, guys. But normally there is a size difference. You know, red Tegu, blue Tegu, they're larger, especially if they're males. They're larger than the black and white Tegu. But the nice thing is their temperament is the same. So black and white Tegus, here's Sweet Tooth. She's my Argentine black and white Tegu. She's 2 years old. She's the biggest doll. She's so sweet. She's so loving. She's so curious. She loves interaction. She's so smart. And she's the biggest doll. Now, sometimes Tegus can go into a brumation period like bearded dragons. Not always, and actually typically it's less common for them than bearded dragons, but it does happen where, you know, they go off food and they just become lazy. And then, you know, they could lose a little bit of weight. That's normal for brumation because, again, they're not eating. And then they're supposed to wake up from brumation and they're supposed to eat. Well, Brian's Tegu, Tazz, went off of food, went into a brumation, so he says, which I like to believe he is because he says it happens every year. And then came back and wouldn't eat, got really thin really quick, got tube fed once or twice and died. Oh, what just scared you? So, what do I think about this? One is I knew the lizard was going to die. I knew. I saw it. When I saw Tazz and how skinny it was, and the day that they went to tube feed it for the first time, it was over. Like, it was way too late to be tube feeding at that point. Although, sometimes guys with lizards, they can look okay, and then they can just go bad. Which is, and it could be hard for business, which is why I weigh my lizards every month. I have to see, did they drastically lose weight, even if it's not visual. But when you looked at Tazz, his head was sunken in. I mean, he lost a lot of weight. The other thing is, when they went to tube feed him, I believe a mistake was made, and he was tube fed too much. Although I don't believe this directly led to his death. But if you watch the video, they were tube feeding him, and then there's a cut. And then they come back, and Tazz had thrown up a lot. If you've ever tube fed an animal or fed it water, I mean, he threw up to the point where the food was even coming out of his nose. So just like us, he was throwing up. So food was all over the people who were holding him. His one aide, he was holding his head up and everything. That's a normal procedure, hold the head up when you tube feed. But his hands was covered in the food. The nose was the food. And I said this, I knew it. I knew this lizard wasn't going to make it. So I don't think the tube feeding led to it, because he died the next day, they said. Or 2 days later, excuse me. So why do I think what could have happened? And I think it's the tank that they're in. And this is one comment that I would make. Because Brian is a reptile zoo, a lot of his cages are large. Very large, all set up kind of the same with different rock ledges and everything. But they're also typically very high, tall, and so the heating and the UVB fixtures are typically far away from the reptiles and on the outside of a screen. Can you stay in frame so I can film you? And that could be what's leading to the tank setups, guys, seem to be pretty uniformity going across, like insides at least, for all of the creatures there. Some tanks are bigger, so they have larger pieces of wood, but I really question, so like a Tegu, this is probably going to be one of your most simplest tanks you could set up, and they don't need to be huge. Because I've gone over it before. What does Sweet Tooth do? She basks, and then her basking spot underneath it is actually the cave, and most of the time she's in the cave. And then she goes to her water bowl, which I have on the cool side, to poo or drink or pee in, and then she digs and goes and sleeps. Most of the time, guys, these are cave-dwelling animals, Tegus. So when I look at a lot of Brian's tanks, because they're a show display, there's a lack of one thing in these tanks for the lizards. There's a lack of hides. I don't see any good cave or walled structure where the lizards could really go in when they feel uncomfortable to feel more comfortable. Because if they did that, then they wouldn't be on display. So it could have been built up stress. Okay, that's one thing for their lizard care. The other thing is the distance between the UV area, because the UV area is not always the basking spot, but the distance between the UV area and the UV source. Now, if you look at my other video, there's a significant difference. So Brian uses in most of his cages a heat bulb, which is good. I would like to believe his temperatures are 100% spot on, because he's got to have a temp gun. He has thermostats. He knows what he's doing. I don't know. I've never seen him talking about checking the UV, and I've never seen him check the UV. I just question, in some of the cages that are really tall, that have a strip tube, LED bulb in it. Let's say it's even one of the best bulbs you can get, and one of the strongest bulbs you can get, an Arcadia 14% bulb. Look it up, guys. That's one of the best, made in Germany, super strong, super strong. But how much UVB is realistically going to get from that tube that's at the top? Then there's a mesh screen. And then in some of the cages, a human being can stand in. So let's say 4 to 5 feet drop. I mean, there's got to be no UVB. When you look at so typically when you do reptile cages, guys, especially lizards, this is where stuff it gets even more fussy than with snakes. Because I think Brian knows 100% what he's doing with snakes. I think on the lizard end is where some help would need to be done. But if you see the professional people, the real people who get lizards to live a long time, their tanks are always more simple. And sometimes they even have bulbs hanging lower in their tank, and so you can see the fixture. Not ideal, doesn't look as beautiful, but because maybe they need that heat source to be closer, or they need that UV source to be closer, because if it was at the top of the tank, it wouldn't look great. In fact, what was it? I was watching Camp Kennan, and he went to some guy. Was he in northern Florida? I don't remember. But the gentleman had 2 blackthroat monitors, and he had made a walk-in enclosure in his basement. Gorgeous enclosure. But he had hanging down from the ceiling like a 4-foot drop. So just the power cord to the fixture, the heat sources, and the UV sources, instead of having them, at the top of the basement ceiling, because it would be too far. And that's where I just think some of the lizard enclosures at the Reptarium are off because it's a zoo. I believe they're off for the look of the enclosure rather than that. Now, could a combination of these things, not proper UV, yeah, that could have, not getting proper D3 then, could that lead to it? Yeah, now there are things you can counter that, so maybe Brian, knowing that his UV is low, was supplementing D3, then that's fine, but that's a what if, don't know. But it just sucks. It just sucks. So like I said, I don't know if he did anything wrong, but it just sucks that Tazz was my favorite one, and the one I wanted to see the most when I was going to go there, because me and my family were getting ready to buy some tickets. So just sucks, guys. No negativity. That's just my comments. I don't think he did anything wrong. It just happens, and a lot of you guys had asked. Could it have been preventable? Probably, but, who knows. The other thing is, if you look at Sweet Tooth here, guys, she just shed. Look at all this shed. I have so much shed. On a side note, if anyone knows about a Tegu when they shed, I love when a Tegu sheds, because they basically burst like through the shed, like the Kool-Aid Man, like, oh yeah, coming through the wall. Like literally, they get as thick as possible. Look at her arm. There's a little piece left right on her arm right there. You see it? They literally get as tight as possible in their old skin, and then they just like flex, like poof, 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 all their muscles, and burst out of their skin. It's really cool to see if you get to see it. It's also cool to see the aftermath, to get just huge pieces of skin. Anyways, though, that's my comment on Brian Barczyk's Blue Tegu dying. Tazz sucks. The one I wanted to see possibly could have been prevented, but like I said, I knew that thing was dead, unfortunately, when we saw it. Take care, guys. Thank you guys for supporting my reptile rescue family.